So
All right.
let's go remote together.
Good morning, Michelle. It is June the 2nd, and I am super excited to be with you. And we've got one of our community members, Linda, here today. How are you keeping on this June 2nd, 2021?
I'm doing great. The pool opened. It opens after Memorial Day, and I'm just all about the water. I know you are too, and I know Linda is too. She's at our table. So we're
Yeah.
all water people. So I hope to get in the water today.
Ooh, that's
How
so
are you?
I'm doing well. I got in the water up to my waist up north the other day, and it was a little bit too chilly still. So I'm looking forward to some hot summer days. I think there's a heat wave on the horizon, and yeah, it should prompt some like movement on perhaps a hybrid highway as we've been talking.
Yes, absolutely. Love the hybrid highway. And I love where we're going today because we're talking all about your body of work that's coming out. It's only, what is it? The 15th? Is
The
that the big day?
June. Yes, my newest book, Reconnecting Workspaces Pathways to Thrive in the Virtual, Remote, and Hybrid World, will be released. And it's going to be an exciting month. It's going to be an exciting summer. As many of you know, I've been talking about this for months now. It's been a book that's been in process for many, many years. I actually am likening it to my tome, TOME. It really is the meta umbrella for a series of additional books that will be coming out, one at least later this year, possibly two, and into 2022 and beyond. So very excited to be sharing that with you today as well. So thanks for joining us. Linda, how are you doing this morning? What are you
I-
coming to the call with?
I'm excited this morning and congratulations on your book release. I'm currently writing a book too. So that just, and listening to you talk about even more future books and other things coming out this year, I'm already like, okay, if she can do all this, I can do it.
We can
I
all
love
do
it.
it, right? And remember, it's like doing things in the margin of our lives. And I've been asked that question a lot, like, how do you do this? And I like to say, really, it's not an overnight something, right? It's like consistent action plus daily steps equals momentum. That's what I wrote about in PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder. So I walk my talk, and that's our theme today. So, are you both ready to get rolling in our remote pathway?
Let's
Yes.
roll.
Let's roll. So I thought, you know what, like part of being successful in this space is not about reinventing the wheel. So I was thinking, what were some of the favorite things that we've been doing here at the community as well as on the podcast? And you'll see some of those reflected in our call today, starting with, drum roll please, another word search. So I first did this back in December for remote pathways, but I've just pulled together a word search for reconnecting workspaces and want to invite you this morning, perhaps, to use your annotation to do some mental brain work as we get our brains going for the day. So, this is the new Reconnecting Workspaces word search, compliments of the wordsearch.com. And I'd like to invite you both to grab your annotation button, and we're going to get started looking to find common words in this space. And maybe let me just frame it, like part of reconnecting workspaces is about helping people as they get back into the work space, not the workplace. Notice the difference, right? For many of us, we may not be back physically together as an entire team. We might, in fact, be some on site, some off site. Some people may be opting to work remote because maybe they've moved, maybe they have responsibilities. Maybe the business location has been sold. These are the current realities of 2021 as we emerge out of the pandemic. And so I'd like to invite you both to just grab your pen. The book has 21 chapters, and we're looking at everything from productivity to meetings, projects to feedback, strengths to relationships, the triad of trust, safety, and connection. It's about mentoring, it's about coaching, it's about onboarding, it's about teamwork, it's about everything. So I love the fact that the first one on the board was relationships and onboarding. And actually, the second book of 2021 that will come out under the Reconnecting Workspaces banner will be an onboarding guide to help people in their first whether it's their first 90 days of roll or 90-day period, a 90-day sprint cycle. That book will be coming out probably around August, September. So stay tuned. So let's get into this mentoring. There we go. Are you having fun?
So sorry. I can't do a straight line.
I know. You
Can't
can
either.
also highlight, right? You can highlight these. I've just found the word strength. So I got to open up my annotate as well and get going with this. For those of you watching this, I hope you're having as much fun going, oh, okay. And this is a little like doorway into my world, right? As I used to do so much flying, and you know, I have to say, as a flyer, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I've had good flights and bad flights, and definitely way more good flights than bad flights. And so I would often take word search just to make me relax in on a flight. So it's just like, here we go. So let me find my drawing. Here we go. Strengths.
I love it. I feel like when I try to highlight or do a circle on this, that I'm writing something with my non-dominant hand.
Yes, that's how I feel.
We're probably activating another side of the brain. Maybe that's some more research that could be done.
Sorry.
So we'll give it
Oh,
just a few
fun.
more minutes. You know, you can always come back to this. I just found the word lever. How exciting. The levers of engagement. What else do we have here? This is sort of hard. Oh, tome. I didn't expect to put the word tome in here, but it's in here. Tome.
Oh, there's next.
That's what I was looking for, Michelle. I was looking for next. I am not kidding.
We're in sync this morning.
How is it? Like, because I was like, surely I can find next because of the X.
Yes, that's exactly the mindset that I have. There won't be many X's in there. That's
There's a lot that I
hilarious.
think are backwards, just to do a little thing.
I was looking for trust too, just because I love that word, but I couldn't seem to find it today.
No, well, they're here. They're here. We'll give it just another minute. There's productivity. Productivity.
I apologize. I don't know how to talk these.
Let's try and find one more each, and then we'll call it a day on this exercise to warm up our brains.
I was determined to find time, but I do not see time.
So what does that say, right?
That says a lot.
Yeah, well, we've got some good ones here. I'm just highlighting on the board. Some of them we've got onboarding, relationships, strengths, conversations. Anyone find feedback?
Virtual, we.
Oh, yay. And there's coaching. I think we're complete, aren't we? I think
Mhm.
that's pretty good. So thank you. If you have more time, definitely check out this word search. And I hope it was a fun way to just
Yes.
get the morning started. All right, let's get started. And I think we are started. So our philosophy this month is experimentation. We're just at the beginning of June. We'll be moving into motivation in the next month, but just an invitation to think about, how are you experimenting? What's working? What's not working the way you thought it would? And I think this is a great question. I was speaking to a group last night, and one of the questions that came from the audience was, you know, how do you address failure? How do you address failure as a coach? How do you address failure as a leader? And I thought that was such a brilliant question, because I think inevitably in this space of remote, virtual, and hybrid work, we're going to experience failure potentially every day. And my response was, you know what, I've learned that it's maybe not, I like to reframe things from failure to, it just didn't work, and let's try another thing. I think we're all really aware of the Edison quote that, you know, in order for him to find the light bulb, he tried, 10,000 different experiments, and then it finally worked. And I'd like you to think about what you've done this week. What's worked as you had planned, and what you did that didn't quite work as it might have thought, but actually got you a little closer to the solution. And to me, that's what experimentation is about. It's not about failure, it's about experience, it's about learning, it's about trial and error. And each time we get a little closer to the mark. So I know, Linda, you came to the call sharing that you're working on a new book, right? It's like, what's
Yes.
been interesting for me with Reconnecting Workspaces is I really thought that this book would have been out a couple of years ago. Even Michelle, I think Michelle can remember a conversation we had probably 6 months ago when I was feeling very frustrated that I just could not move this book forward. And do you remember what you said to me, Michelle? I don't know if you
I
remember this.
I don't. Tell me.
You said, you know what, maybe the time isn't right. And I was like, no, the time is right. I need to get this done now. And it was only beginning of this year that I really made a concerted effort. I brought this project to the table for the 21 for 21 virtual co-working sprints every day for several months. And I realized, you know what, I think really, as Michelle said, maybe the time wasn't right, because it was the book for under a working title for many years was just virtual and
Mm,
remote work, teamwork, and leadership, VRTWL. And I realized that if that is how I had published it, it would have lost a whole layer of the hybrid, of reconnecting, which is really what people need. They don't just need ideas for teamwork and leadership, but it's really about how do we reconnect in the workspace. So thank you, Michelle. You had a very significant imprint on helping me reframe this book. So I just wanted to say that this morning.
wow. Just, well, you've done it for me a bajillion times. So that's great.
Well, fantastic. And if you haven't listened in lately, we are going to move into our water cooler. But here's where we've been. We've been talking about the 6 layers of connection that comes from Reconnecting Workspaces. So check that out. Episode 35. And I can't believe, was it just really episode 38 that we just released? Patrick
I
Burns.
know. I know.
Wow,
Crazy.
that is amazing. So definitely check out Patrick's podcast, episode 38. He is the co-founder of Commons, which is an audio-only workplace platform. Is there anything you want to say about that interview we did with Patrick a few weeks
Yeah.
ago?
Listen in, be inspired, and consider what you can do for your teams. This, I've got to say, I'm a little selfish on this one. I think this one's going to be really great for me and my hopes of reconnecting with people. I just love the interactivity and the intentionality that they put behind it. They've really thought through just some of those nuances. So I really encourage people to check it out. I think it's going to be a fun one.
So don't only check out our podcast episode with Patrick, which is number 38 in the Remote Pathways podcast series, but also check out Commons. And I don't think it's commons.com, right? It's
SO.
commons.so. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So yes, check it out. Very interesting, very important, I think, as we reconnect. And it's an audio only platform. So that's what we've been talking about. And what you'll hear me talking about is reconnecting workspaces. And in the light of bringing back all things that we've been talking about, Michelle said this several times. Guess what the most important theme of what the most listened to episode of Remote Pathways, I think still to date, was our episode, maybe episode 10, I'm not even sure, but our episode on trust, safety, and connection in the virtual space. So, of course, the triad had to show up as chapter 5/6 in Reconnecting Workspaces. I can't tell you how many conversations I wind up having every week around this notion of how do we build trust in the remote space? And especially now, how do we build trust and connection in the hybrid space? So Michelle, you've been probably looking at the stats lately. What are the stats saying about this episode on trust? Is it still the number one of all
Still
of
the
our?
number one. Still the number one. I think people are hungry for it. So I love the combination of trust, safety, and connection, and then reconnecting workspaces, because I think this body of work for you, that's really the heartbeat behind all you do. So I really think it is the time for this message.
Yeah. And if you can see the work, again, the heavy influence of the triad, even in the cover of the book, right? And if we don't have the trust, if we aren't feeling connected, and if we don't feel safe in bringing our topics and our issues that are most important to us, we're not going to engage, right? We're going to just stay in our own bubbles. And so it really is a fundamental part of this whole new body of work, which of course is an evolution of the conversations that I've been having for years But here's the interesting thing. There's two layers on, well, there's another layer on top that you might not have seen or heard me talk about unless you were with me in a leadership training program. So for years with facilitators, with coaches, with team members, we've been talking about the triad of trust, safety, and connection. But there's also another triad that plays out, and that is trust, respect, and influence. And I think this is a really important one, like, especially, when we think about one-on-one relationships or team relationships, respect of differences, respect of strengths, respect of the uniqueness is key to what we bring. And so there really is a secondary triangle of trust, respect, and influence. In the remote and hybrid space, as we've learned, as everyone has learned, things are done through influence, not through command and control. And so think about how you are building respect, how you're building that trust and the respect muscles so that you can, across the board, really influence. And I'm not just talking influence from a leader to team members. This relates with peer-to-peer relationships. It happens when we're managing up with our bosses. So also think about how the triangle also plays out. And that's something I get a little bit more into in the chapter on the triad of trust, safety, and connection. I think that's always the primary one, but underneath it lies this other TRI. And I have to say that analogy goes back 10 plus years ago for the guys, and they were all guys, for the guys who might have stumbled on this is their imprint, because I spent 5.5 years working with amazing leaders in an organization that was really in a huge wave of transformation, where more than 50% of their leaders were actually retiring within a 5-year period.
Wow.
And so they embarked on a whole journey of really like equipping these frontline leaders, really frontline professionals who probably in their, as they started their career, they never would have imagined that they would become team leaders one day. And an amazing journey of 5 years. It totally changed the culture of the organization. And a really big thing that surfaced month after month as we went through this 18 months of learning together was the try of the trust, respect, and influence. And that was because they were working in a hybrid world. So just keep that in mind as we get going. So Michelle, and also for you, Linda, like how does a triad show up in your world right now? What's the connection here for you?
Well, for me, when I, do my classes and I teach, one thing that I had received feedback from one of my leaders was when I gave him feedback about how the class and the participants came in, his immediate response, which I did not even think about it, his immediate response was, you built trust immediately within the first call. They trusted you because of the way that the class flowed, the connection and response to one another within the class. So I just love that, you're pulling this out, and it's really reminding me again. I'm grateful. I think that it's kind of my personality in a sense that helps with that, to be honest. But it also makes me kind of really say, I want to lean in and make sure and take a moment to really think about that before I lead and teach my classes. Okay, what am I doing here again? Like I said, I feel like I naturally flow in that ability, but I want to make sure I lean in and see, okay, is there something else I can do to make sure my participants feel safe? Now, I'm going to interject this too. One thing is that I have not been recording my classes.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, for quite some time, I have felt like I feel like if I record my classes, then people might not feel as comfortable to speak up, and you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of a, I don't know if that's another reason why people feel naturally more comfortable. I don't know. I mean, again, it's not that there's nothing wrong with recording, but that's just something to think about and ponder.
I think that's a really interesting layer. And I think, there may be both a conscious and an unconscious, impact on trust, because
Mhm.
yes, like if something is being recorded, it's like, where is it getting shared and who is going to hear this? And can I really be me? And so to video and audio, right? Another link to this Commons interview that we did, what happens with trust if people feel like they're, if people are feeling seen, but seen in a way that they don't want to be seen. So that has implications, I think, too, for audio and video.
Mhm.
Very interesting. And Michelle, how about you? What are you connecting with this morning with the two tries?
Yeah, well, I'm coming back to what you said about just remote in general. Every remote professional is a leader. So I just love this extra layer that you're bringing to the surface. And I love that the respect really comes down to honoring people. And then the influence is really taking ownership of the impact that you are making. And I heard even Linda do that. And I've had the pleasure of sitting at her virtual table. And I will say that is so true. People just naturally open up. So you're really good at creating that environment. But yeah, I just love seeing that this is highlighted. And I also appreciate you bringing the success story out, from years ago, that if you actually focus on that and do it with intention, it can reap great rewards. And that it was a hybrid team that came through with. So I think just thank you for the impact that brings today on our call.
Well, stories can illuminate, stories can definitely help us, learn the successes and the things that don't necessarily work well. So another area, and these are not the final versions of it because we realized it wasn't too clear, but there's another little piece that I wanted to share with everyone today, which is known as the CV came with FETA. I was trying to come up with a fun acronym around what's needed in this space. And so I'm going to just expand this out. But the CV came with feta. It really doesn't make sense. Like, what would a CV, like a CV and a resume, come with feta cheese? Why would that happen? But I really wanted to get to the heart of what are some things that we need to be doing. And so again, in the book, these were, what I love about books is they go through many, many different iterations, right? But so the concept of CV came with feta stayed on, but the image, you're going to see a whole different image in the book. It started out as this green thing, right? So what are the skills that we need? Well, we need collaboration. We need to activate visuals. We need to remember that culture is king. Back to that story just a few seconds ago. It's like, how do we affect change? Well, part of it is we need to change culture. And that is key to everything in the remote space. If you don't feel like you're part of a team, you would go off and do your own thing, right? I think we can all think about our experience. So culture is really that web that brings us together. And I've put it just here as culture is king. Another great thing about work in this space is it's all about autonomy. And for some of us, that is amazing. I always said for years, even when I was a leader, I was thousands of miles, sometimes tens of thousands of miles away from my bosses. And what that meant was they gave me a lot of leeway in terms of what I could do, what I had authority to do. And for my team and I, that was really key. We could really create something different than the 180 other offices around the world. And that was super exciting for us because it meant that we could create to what was essential outside our windows, not outside our boss's window, tens of thousands of miles away. So think about how autonomy plays in. And for some, that can be a huge motivator. One of the other things that this book goes into to a little bit, because part of the world of hybrid and remote and virtual is all about matrix relationships. So there, of course, has to be in the CV came with FETA, matrix relationships. And also at the heart of this is one of my favorite topics that we've covered before, engagement. And I really frame it out as engagement is key. As we've heard, and no surprise, we talk about this every episode at Remote Pathways. Engagement is at the heart of excellent work in the virtual, remote, or hybrid world. The F is fluidity, right? So how can you be fluid? And we've seen moment after moment in these last few years of how essential it is to be fluid in our work, in our rhythms, as Michelle would say, in our routines, as well as flexibility. I put flexibility and fluidity sort of hand in hand. it's really essential that we cultivate that or even hire for that. And for many years in my former world of work, a big part of my work was recruiting people, recruitment and selection. So I would sit for days in interviews, interviewing people who, were amazing. But one of the things I was always listening for was not just their technical expertise, but really what was their flexibility factor. Because when you're looking to hire a team of people that are on the front lines of a disaster, you need technical experts, but you also need people who are able to flex and problem solve, who recognize that, nothing is going to be done by the book, and who are able to be fluid, not only in their work, but also fluid and flexible in their relationships with others. So when I pulled together this list of like essential elements for hybrid, virtual and remote work, fluidity had to come on it. And of course, we need everyone. We need everyone at the table. I have to say, it's been really exciting for me to see the conversations, be part of the conversations around inclusivity on so many layers. And if you think about the 5 engagement levers, things that we've been talking about here at Remote Pathways, and I've been talking about under the Stand Out Virtually banner for the last year, we really, really need everyone at the table, whether that's physically or virtually. And one of the big challenges with hybrid is, we can often create, if we're not careful, we can create an us them. And this is where, as places reopen, we really have an opportunity to ensure that everyone's voice is equal. And that may mean that actually meetings stay on Zoom, not always go back into the boardroom. That's a bit perhaps provocative, because we all know about Zoom fatigue, but there is a real difference if everyone has their space and their voice between, having a few people on Zoom and then people back in the main conference room. So I'm not saying do it every time, but definitely mix it up. So 2 more, and I don't even have my watch on today, so I'm going to need Michelle to give me a time check. What time
You're
are we at?
7:29.
7:29. Okay, I'm going to frame this up. Last 2 time frames and assumptions. 2 things, assumptions are the kiss of death, as you've probably heard me say, or as Henry Winkler said, termites. Assumptions are the termites of relationships. And so we really want to be very careful in unearthing and owning and even, being explicit with the assumptions we're making to check out that that is really what's needed. Of course, I had to put time frames here because typically things will take longer. And even as you heard our conversation today, that can be a bit of a pressure, a frustration. But usually, we need to recognize that things will happen in their due course as long as we keep it moving. So CV came with FETA. That is part of the Reconnecting Workspaces body, 21 chapters, 440 pages. I'm super excited to be releasing it on June the 15th. So definitely join us at 4 p.m. that day. I'll be hosting a special live launch party, and reconnectingworkspaces.com is where you can head on over. So we've talked podcast episodes. Here's our thing. Productivity is still key in the space. So how can we be effective in focusing on the essentials? Michelle, anything you want to say about our Facebook, or even, what you've been hearing in today's conversation?
Well, I get a little silly sometimes, but I think we just landed on a fun hybrid code word. So we can say, have you heard the virtual buzz? CV came with FETA. Nobody will have any idea what we're talking about. But boy, would it be a fun conversation sparker to just open the virtual door, so to speak, to have that important hybrid highway conversation.
Well, you know what? Remember, things, as Suzuki said, in the virtual space, actually, they didn't say it in the virtual space, but, things stand out when they are unique or memorable. And one of the things we want to create in this space is memorability. So, hey, if the CV came with FETA, if that's the thing that people remember about Reconnecting Workspaces, that's probably enough for people to do a bit of a Google search and find it. So I'll have to do a blog post on that. Thank you so much. Because you know what? It'll activate curiosity. And so here's a quote from the book, chapter 3. Curiosity is critical for the success of virtual teams. When we cannot see each other, we need to be open to experiencing each other's reality. The ability to put ourselves in each other's shoes is another important element of empathy. and passion is required for drive and self-motivation. So virtual teams, they need the CV came with FETA. They need curiosity, empathy, and the ability to really continue to tap into their passion. So I hope that today has given you an opportunity to do that. Conversation Sparker is simply what's the layer you want to explore today. As always, we've gone through multiple layers in this conversation. Linda, let's bring your voice in. What is the takeaway that you're leaving our call with today?
Well, there was so many different things, but really, honestly, the word time stood out for me today. Time. And so I'm really going to revisit the time component. I think that we just I get in a driven mode, and so I'm going to slow down and reevaluate my time here. So anyway, it was time. And then the other word too that really stood out was trust, continuing to build that virtual trust. And really I want to lean into that and invest in exploring more around that, of how to continue to build trust with others virtually.
Well said. Michelle, what's your takeaway from today, or the layer that you're leaving with?
The new triad. The new triad's just so much fun. So I want to dig deeper, and just Linda, thanks for joining us at the virtual table. Jenn, thanks for leading us through your new book. And I just really appreciate these community calls. Starts my day off right. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you for joining us. Maybe you'll be back in 2 weeks for our monthly planning session, June 17th at 7:30 a.m. It's a 45-minute session. It is something that actually helps us keep going. So there's a nominal $20 charge. But this month, we're going to be doing a quarterly review. So I think that might be of great value for many of you before you step into the summer months. Hope that you will join us. You can sign up at remotepathways.com/planning. And our next call, Michelle, I've taken the liberty to set it actually for the second Thursday, because the first Thursday of July will be Canada Day. And that is July the 1st. I will be hopefully sleeping in that morning. And then on July 8th, we'll do that. I'll be working remote from my favorite location in the world.
Sounds fabulous.
And you'll be home for you. So
yes.
Good. Linda, thank you for joining us. Everyone else, thank you for joining us. We love connecting with you. We love to hear your feedback and your comments. So please make sure that you are liking and sharing our podcast. You can check it out at remotepathways.com, and you can also find it on your favorite podcast player. So with that, Michelle, you get final words.
Have a great day out there in the remote world.
Take care, everyone. Be well.